Two operators, one conversation, no fluff. This is the Wealthy Momentum Podcast with Jimmy Nicholas and Dr. Dustin Burleson. AI is not going to replace you. Entrepreneurs using AI are going to replace the ones who do not.
All right. Welcome, Jimmy. We're back.
We're back. And we're on video.
We're on video. Oh my gosh. My dad always said I had a face for radio, so I apologize with all the gray hair. And man, we're getting old, but I'm having a lot of fun. This is the first official episode of Wealthy Momentum. We made it. We're here. This is the kickoff. This is two operators, Jimmy Nicholas and I. I'm Dustin Burleson, by the way. A lot of you know me from dental and orthodontic marketing for many, many moons. But Wealthy Momentum is the two of us figuring out this new world in real time. You've seen what we've been doing. We're going to talk about that, but it's not a recap show like I used to do. It's not a lecture like the old look over my shoulder. This is all about the two of us figuring things out in real time. And today we're going to talk about a very important topic, and that's that most businesses get confused about what's true and never changes and what needs to die now. And I was guilty of this. I chased shiny object after shiny object, what's new, and sometimes lost sight of the core, like what should never change. And so we're gonna dig into that. And again, I'm just so excited. This is it. We're here. We finally made it. The first official episode of Wealthy Momentum.
Now, our mentor, Dan Kennedy, has always been big on principles and going back to the principles. And a lot of the principles won't change, but maybe the tactics will change. And, there are countless stories that we've shared with each other along the way of things that really should stand the test of time. And the one that comes to me first is my famous logo test. And that is something that will never change. And perhaps for those of you who haven't heard of my logo test, it started with websites. And if you were to go on your website and remove your logo in, most likely in the upper left and put a competitor's logo on there, does the information outside of the contact information still hold true? And most often when we go to websites today, especially before the user scrolls, so if we go back to, newspaper print, it was like above the fold was the most important articles would be above that fold before they had to flip the paper or certainly turn inside the paper. Similar principle with websites, and having messaging that truly differentiates you from the marketplace is critical, because if that logo gets replaced and the information is true still, that means you look and sound like everyone else, which is not what we want to do. And as I mentioned, the desktop is where, that logo test started way back in 2009-10 timeframe. And then it evolved obviously to the mobile sites. And today, if you go on your mobile device, what does your site look like before the scroll? Is it easy for them to call? But also having that messaging that differentiates yourself is so critical. And it may be a billboard. It may be a magazine ad. That logo test can be applied to any type of media, and you don't want to just sound and look like everyone else. So it's one of those principles that, I constantly are, training new hires on. And when they see it and experience it, wow, that makes so much sense. It also makes prospecting for us pretty easy as well, because more often than not, we see these websites out there not passing the logo test, and it's a quick win that our listeners can have, and go check out your own site and on mobile and desktop and see if you pass that.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't changed. I feel like you fixed our website almost what seems like 100 years ago. And we're talking about all these things that are changing truly day to day, hour to hour with artificial intelligence. And that's an interesting thing that if you literally go back, I think probably 12, 13, at least, a decade ago, that is still true today, even though things are changing hour by hour. If where consumers land following an Instagram ad or on your TikTok video, where they eventually land doesn't make sense, doesn't tell them why they should care, then, you might as well not even have it. We were just driving cross country and we were laughing, listening to all these like Ashley Loves true crime podcasts and a lot of these like missing people cases and stuff. Like back then we're like, oh yeah, the phone back in 2006, like it wasn't constantly pinging the tower. There was no smartphone. It was just a flip phone. Like it had to be on. Like, and it was just wild to think that wasn't 100 years ago, but it seems like 100 years ago. So, and Jimmy mentioned Dan Kennedy, other smart people in that world, Gary Bencivenga, John Carlton, really smart marketers that have asked the question for a long time. What do some of the most successful firms do that doesn't change? And Jeff Bezos wisely said this. He said, everybody wants to know what's new, but the better question is to ask what's not new, what's not going to change. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, I don't envision a day where Amazon's customers want their packages delivered slower. I don't envision a day where Amazon customers want to pay more for a product than they could get it somewhere else. So he's staying true to their core, which is low price, super fast delivery. And if you look at smart companies, and we've talked about them, Jimmy and I have lectured on these from on stage and in products that a lot of you have consumed over the years. Think about Apple, you think about the Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton. I was really fortunate to do some training at the Leadership Institute with the Ritz-Carlton leaders. I was really, really fortunate to do a lot of studying with the Disney Institute. So there's some really smart companies that like know their core and they know those things are never going to change. And the one example, I don't know if it's the Ritz or the Four Seasons, but they both kind of follow this ethos of like, there is no customer service department. It's just everyone is in customer service. By the way, if you look at the average tenure of a Four Seasons employee, it's over 20 years. The average tenure of a hotel service industry employee is around 18 months. And so when you've been around for 20 years, you don't have to say, well, let me go ask a supervisor. You just know the answer to the customer's concern and question. So the Ritz and the Four Seasons have this thing called 10-4. So I apologize if I'm attributing it to the wrong place, but we use that in our business. And that's within 10 feet of someone approaching you, you acknowledge them, you look up and you as they get closer, you say, good morning, how are you? Have a great day. Like you actually acknowledge and then greet them. And a lot of hotels, you walk past 20 employees and no one even looks you in the eye, acknowledges your presence. And so if you think about the Four Seasons, that principle hasn't changed for 50 years. It's not going to change for 50 years. Even though technology is running faster and faster and faster, what smart companies are doing in serving others and also driving lifetime customer value and understanding who it is they're serving, they have things that never change. And from Disney to Apple to Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton, a lot of the companies we like to talk about because they have staying power, but they also have high customer lifetime value. They have high margin. They're also really fun places to go and to do business with. It's an awesome place to have an event. We've had live events for our doctors, and we've done those at the Four Seasons, and everything is taken care of. We've done those at other places, and it can be not the same experience. So it's really smart to ask what never changes. And in Jimmy's example here, the logo test, it's never going to change. I don't ever envision a day where a consumer lands on a website and goes, what the heck is this? Like, this isn't what I was looking for. This has nothing to do with what I was looking for. And so you click the back button or you ask the next question into your AI bot. That is a principle that'll never change. So we got a bunch of them. We'll dig into some of them throughout the show, but I think that it really is worth highlighting that right now, today, there are 100 things vying for your attention that will not be the same a week or a month from now. They might change tomorrow. Depending on the weather, for example, your policy on how you deal with inbound leads tomorrow, if you're a snow removal company, it's going to be very different if there's snow on the ground than if it's the middle of the summer. So it can change hour to hour. And we want you to think through in every business, what will not change in 100 years. What Vern Harnish calls a mission to Mars, and we'll dig into that later. But what never changes is a really powerful question.
And piggybacking off of, Ritz Carlton and Four Seasons, and I think of relationships and how important those relationships are, and they really just make you feel important. When you stay at the Ritz Carlton, and the second time you walk past that doorman, Mr. Nicholas, how you doing today? And I mean, my son was blown away. Like, how does he know you? And it really, that human aspect. I go back to how our relationship started many, many years ago. You FedExed me a handwritten note and congratulated me on winning the Marketer of the Year, and I was just blown away to get a handwritten note. And today, I remember, starting my business 15 years old and writing a handwritten note to everyone that decided to trust me in building their website. And we get busy and we forget about these things, and it's important. And with tools and technology, we can still have that. And it's also what you say and how you interact with the technology that's so important, because obviously with text messaging and SMS and AI agents, you can have this thing say anything you want it to, but by choosing the words that actually are human, you can elicit a response. And now the people who are the humans and interacting with, say, a group of people that are on your list, they'll know who to contact because that person raised their hand. And I'm thinking of a specific example. We were working with Retainer Club, and they had a massive database of people who had a retainer and had not gotten it replaced, and it's been 6 months, 12 months, and obviously you want to replace your retainer and make sure from a hygiene standpoint that you've got it, and if the dog took it, and you want to have a backup and so forth. And we tested all kinds of different messages and tried to get real crafty. And what it came down to was the best one was, how's your retainer fitting? And that simple message turned into, oh my gosh, I lost my retainer. And it's like, oh, I want to get a new one, or, it's time I should I should replace it. And those types of conversations. Now, if we sent that out to, say, 100 people in a batch, we may get 15 responses, but get them quickly. So now the CSR, the person who, instead of just given them the list and cold calling down the, start to bottom, they're able to start having interactions with, oh, there's 15 people that they're alive, and they have expressed interest in some capacity to talk to us, and we can then facilitate that conversation through text, but get them on the phone and have that human interaction. And so, from a principle of never changing, certainly relationships and that human aspect, which we can't forget, based on the time that we're in, it's so easy to forget the human side of it. And really, we should be utilizing technology to allow us to have better interactions with, our clients and patients.
So I shouldn't just assume the AI is going to like text Ashley a happy birthday message and then automatically send her like a DoorDash, like her favorite meal. I should actually remember as a human to take her out on her birthday. Is that what you're saying? I can't just automate my entire life with AI? Damn it, Jimmy. I thought we were all going to be flying in the Jetsons flying car, and everything was going to be automated. That's a great point, right? So AI is not going to replace the human element. I mean, a lot of these things, if you've been listening and paying attention to what Jimmy's been doing, which I'm really excited, it really stemmed from a meeting we had in April of last year with about 20 dentists from Italy, and they got to see what Jimmy was doing using AI to scrape all the Google reviews for some of our clients, and then seeing what patients were actually saying. And sometimes, smart marketers like Kennedy and Carlton, they say it's burying the lead, right? You're taking the most important thing and you're burying it down here. Like we did years ago. We had all this like beautiful smiles and simply spectacular smiles. And Jimmy's like, don't you guarantee that patients won't have to miss work or school? I'm like, yeah, we're open 7 to 7, 6 days a week. And he said, you might want to lead with that. So we did it in direct mail and it worked really well. And then we put it on the website. We were nervous. I think our competitors might rip it off, and no one did. But there's a point to this, and I'm paraphrasing from E.B. White. So E.B. White is a brilliant author, wrote Charlotte's Web and a lot of other stuff, and famously wrote longhand on paper. There's a picture of him I keep framed where I do a lot of my work in my office. That picture is him at his desk. I think his writing cottage was in Maine. It's somewhere on the coast. I'm pretty sure it's in the Northeast. I'm pretty sure it's Maine. Google will tell us, right? We can already find the answer. But it's him sitting in his writing cottage outside of his home down by the water. There's a desk, and there's a stack of paper, and there's a wastebasket, and there's a window that looks out over the ocean, and that's it. And in his quote, I'm kind of paraphrasing, I think he was towards the end of his career, and maybe they were asking him about not just the typewriter, but the word processor. And he said, technology will make it 10 times easier to write. It won't make the writing 10 times better. So just because you have a word processor doesn't mean your writing's going to be 10 times better. So I've never had an original thought in my head, and I thought, well, E.B. White is onto something. Technology, AI, market. You can go to Canva right now and design a beautiful full page print. I mean, beautiful ad, beautiful video content. You can create beautiful things very quickly. You say just like E.B. White, 10 times faster, 10 times easier, 10 times quicker, 10 times cheaper. But here's important. It won't be 10 times better because the thought process has to be there. The strategy has to be there. The smart mind in the room has to say, when should we be emailing and texting consumers to see if they want a new retainer? When should we be doing that? How much time and money should we invest in that? Should we follow up with the ones who don't reply? Should we send them direct mail? Should we, reach out in a different way? AI is not going to do that for you. So AI will make almost everything 10 times easier, faster, cheaper, but it's not going to make it 10 times better. What you need is better thinking. And I'm going to give you an example in a little bit of how we did that. So the principle that you need better thinking married to now you have better technology. Jimmy and I talked about this in a previous episode leading up to this first episode of Wealthy Momentum, and that was we spent a ton of money with consultants trying to figure out our core values, trying to figure out our mission statement. And we went and I flew across the country and sat in front of people, like Vern Harnish, and listened to their stories on how they grew up in Berkshire Hathaway and how they became consultants. And then Vern's mission to Mars, I was like, oh, this is it. Now I know how to build my core values. And then we came up with this acronym, and Apple had a similar thing. So we had to pay money to hang out with people that were higher up in the marketing. We spent probably $75,000 trying to figure out how to come up with a service step acronym that was SMILE, right? For orthodontists, it was SMILE. Say hello, greet every patient by name, make them feel at home, invite them to share what's going on, listen, truly listen to what we're going to do to help resolve their complaint, concern, their frustration, their objective, and then end with the fond farewell. So every interaction, we were always greeting them by name. We were making them feel at home. What can I come on back? Let's take a look at what's going on. Can I grab you a coffee and grab you a water, grab you a Diet Coke? And then really inviting them to share what they need from us, listening and really trying to lean into the front lines and allow them, empowering them to give the patient what they needed, and always ending with the fond farewell, inviting them back, scheduling their next appointment. We just routinely knew we were going to do that in every interaction, whether it was in person or on the phone and a text message on an email. And that was powerful. But here's the cool thing. With AI, we could have plugged that in and gotten something like that in a millisecond. because AI we can feed it all the core values and mission statements and objectives and visions for all sorts of companies in and outside of our industry. And right, we spend all this time and all this money. So what we're saying now in the second part of this is here's some things that can change. And what could change is that you used to fly across the country and sit in front of a consultant or a guru or pay a ton of money to learn these things and learn them slowly. Today, with AI models, we can go back and forth and get this done in a matter of minutes. And so the method of getting to my core values changed. The principle that I need core values and I need to identify them and talk about them with our company and really live them and live out our vision and mission, that won't change. That will never change. But the method I went about discovering them, fine-tuning them, agreeing with them, surveying the team, and living out that goal was very, very different. So something that changes, something that doesn't change. Good example, you don't have to spend $75,000 anymore to go to a core values workshop and learn how to do this. You can actually do it very quickly with AI models.
And I want to, just unpack a little bit. When you say you can do this in seconds with AI, I will agree with you. But most likely, depending on how you're set up to utilize AI, you're going to get back generic content and generic responses. And the importance of being able to think powerfully and efficiently and know fundamentally, for example, how to develop a unique selling proposition. And knowing that without AI is going to help you get a better result with AI. And so I've been telling clients for the last probably about 6 months now, you could give me $1 million and a year's worth of time with my only task is to come up with that differentiator, that unique selling proposition. So your website and your mobile site and your YouTube videos and all that will be different and will help you attract your ideal patients and ideal clients. You give me the whole year and $1 million. It's the only thing I have to do. And I will tell you that with what we've produced with AI, going back and forth with it for a few hours and the frameworks that we've developed, in about 3 hours, AI will beat me single-handedly because it has the ability to do things that I just physically, mentally can't do. For example, you mentioned, the reviews. Well, it's great. A lot of businesses out there, they have hundreds, thousands of reviews. Well, when's the last time you really sat down and you read every review and you had a little tally next to you with, this pattern identified once, this pattern once, and you would have 100 patterns. So now you got all your papers and you're trying to, it's just not going to happen to the level of what we can do with AI. And reviews are, one data point in order to really help you find how you're unique and have it feel like it's the words you've been looking for your entire career to describe what it is that you do. And oftentimes we as founders or, operators, people in the business, we're so close to what we've built or how we're helping and impacting. We forget what people are actually telling their brother or their mom about why they went to you and why they chose you, and those, common phrases and simplistic phrases oftentimes is where the gold really lies, because that's what they're saying about you and what you're delivering to the marketplace. And if we can put a message out there that resonates with what the marketplace is saying, obviously, we've got a better chance of attracting more of those people. And often when we have more people coming into the business, into the practice, that are great patients, great clients, they know other great patients and great clients. And it's a lot easier to offer your services or products to a referral, and obviously someone who's done business with you before. I mean, that's like the easiest. But when you come as a referral, oftentimes it's, oh, you were referred by XYZ. I know you got to be good, because if Bob chose you, Bob's a real pain. If you could please Bob, I know you're going to please me. And that type of messaging to attract more of those people and then use it to help you get more referrals, that was what I always strived to do and what we all strived to do previously. But executing that was a bigger task. We did the best we could. But now with the frameworks and that principle of finding those answers has not changed. But how we go about finding those answers and leveraging technology is much different today than it was a week ago, even. And it's going to be different, a week from when you listen to this. I don't care if you listen to when it comes out or a year from now. Those types of things will change, and the business owners that win will be the ones who adapt and not chase every shiny object, but principally look at it and say, how can I apply this to my business so that it will be timeless and it will help long term?
Hasn't changed, won't change. You've got to know your customer so well that you could do what John Carlton says, which is you should be able to write a screenplay about the late night conversation they have at the kitchen table. What keeps them up at night? If you sell financial services, you sell cars, you sell orthodontic treatment, you sell home repair services, you sell anything, your target customer, your avatar client, your best customer, client, patient, donor, what keeps them up at night? In my world, it's they think their son or daughter is being bullied at school because of the appearance of their teeth. And maybe the budget is tight and they don't think they could afford orthodontic care right now. They didn't think they were going to have to do braces until their kid was 12. And they've got such severe dental protrusion. Their front teeth are so far forward. They're only 7 years old, but they're being teased at school. And they fell and the tooth was so far forward that they chipped the tooth. And the dentist said, well, you really need to get braces to fix this. The mom and dad are sitting at the kitchen table at 3 a.m. talking about how they're going to afford orthodontic treatment. John Carlton says, could you write a screenplay about that conversation? That principle never changes. You've got to understand your customer that well. Well, how did we do this years ago? What was the tactic? The method was hire, if you were a national company like Kennedy did with Miracle Ear and Weight Watchers, and what we did with Excellence Orthodontics, it was hire a team of copywriters, listen to every phone call for months and months and months. Literally, we shipped Dan huge boxes of all of our postcards, all of our direct mail, all of our internal systems, all of our TV and radio ads, all of it transcribed. We had 1,000 hours of secret shopper tape of actual consumers inside of orthodontic practices buying real orthodontic treatment, every word transcribed. You'd spend months and months and months trying to come up with who is this business, who do they serve, what's unique about them, how can we create a competitive advantage around that, and can they deliver on it? And you would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing this with those methods, and that's the best we had. But today, what Jimmy has built, allows you to do it so much better, so much faster, and reiterate. So it gets better and smarter. And here, I'll give you an example. And then I want to transition into our final framework of like, how do you know if this is something that should stay or something that should go? An example is a device that Jimmy's used with our treatment coordinators. It's a PLAUD device. It's an AI recording device. So the treatment coordinator can capture every interaction with the doctor, the patient, the TC. We let them know we're recording for training purposes, and that AI will immediately recognize and analyze if that patient didn't convert into a start. It'll compare that conversation against 15 years of best practices. Who did the most talking? What words were said? What words weren't addressed? And if the TC starts 8 out of 10, awesome. But those 2 out of 10 that didn't convert, now the AI can say, here's 3 text messages you can send. Here's 2 emails you can send. Here's a script for a phone call you can have over the next 21 days, 14 days, 7 days, pick the cadence. And it's all customized to actually what happened in the room, those patients' fears, hopes, objections. The principle is the same. You've got to follow up with your patient. The method changed entirely. So it's one more example of how things that need to stay can be improved by methods that are now new. And so I'd love to kind of transition, Jimmy, into how to tell the difference. And I'll kick it off. I mentioned it earlier. The Mars example from Vern Harnish is, how do you know if this is something that should stay or you should go? So Vern Harnish says that if you took your entire company and you put them in a rocket ship and you went to Mars, and in my example, as an orthodontist, I don't even know if there's going to be teeth there. My example, as a venture partner in Flagstaff, I don't even know if there's going to be money there. I don't even know if there's going to be businesses to invest in or consumer brands that are worth paying attention to. I don't even know what we're going to find when we get there. But what do I know will still be true about my company? What's still true about us? What's our core? And for us, it's not about you. We pursue results relentlessly. We crawl through broken glass for our customers. We're never satisfied. We always want to pursue results that are better, faster, cheaper for our patient. We always wanted to lower the price, right? We wanted to make it more efficient, better for everyone. That would be true whether we were straightening teeth or, I'm up on Mars and we're changing oil and rocket ships, right? Whatever we're doing, like we're selling stuff like my grandpa at the auto parts store. You think about Jeff Bezos. How does this help the customer? Always like kept an empty seat at the boardroom, but represent the customer. How would she feel about this decision, right? And so, if your values would not survive a change of industry, if you had to get out of your industry into another one, then those really aren't values. Those are just current habits. And so, this is one example of how would you know? Should it go? Should it stay? Well, if you put it on a rocket ship to Mars and no longer suddenly we don't like orthodontists in my world get so excited about what bracket they use and what wire and how many grams of force are on each tooth and what x-ray machine they get real campy and like divide themselves over self-ligating. Is it passive? Is it active? Do we take teeth out? Do we not? Or am I into airway? Is that something I refer or do? And they get so campy about all this stuff. And in the meantime, they don't have a clue how often they're following up with customers, asking for referrals, what the reviews say. They're just focused on the minutia. Well, I can tell you, if we're going to Mars and I don't know if there's teeth on Mars, suddenly that long list of stuff I just described is out the window, right? So that's a good way to figure out, in my world, is it going to stay or is it going to go? And I think in your world, whether you're listening to this and any type of entrepreneurial endeavor, if you executed Vern Harnish's his trip to Mars, would that get in the ship or not? Would it say so? I don't care if I was literally, building houses, selling tires, selling insurance, or straightening teeth. I am always going to pursue results. I'm always going to be about the customer. It's not going to be about me. It's going to be about you. We are going to crawl through glass for you, regardless. Selling insurance, selling tires, straightening teeth, whatever. I'm going to crawl through glass for my customers because I want to earn your referral. We are going to do things the exact same as a core, regardless of the industry. So that's a neat little tip and trick, and hats off to Vern Harnish, who I believe has passed away, but has some wonderful material on the Rockefeller habits and scaling up, some great books. And I'm just super grateful, had a chance to learn from him, and I think it's awesome stuff.
Yeah, he's I've read multiple books from him and implemented not all of the system, but bits and pieces of each of them. And for my world, one of the tests, if let's just say we are going to Mars and we are going to have a business, is how are people going to find out about me? And it's so important that you put yourself where your people are and where they are seeking you out. And so if we go back, years ago, when internet and social media was, starting to just not even take off, but just exist. And it was, Facebook versus Google. Where do I want to be? And we would say we want to be in both. At a minimum, when people are actively searching for you, they would use Google years ago. And so we would perform what we felt was the right things to do in order to increase the likelihood of you having an increased presence and increased visibility when people are seeking out your solutions that you're providing. And it was always debatable, and it always is going to be debatable. But from a test standpoint, as a business owner, if you're listening to this, I would say, does this logically make sense for me today? And will it logically make sense for me a year from now, 2 years from now? And so, yes, there are what could be considered gray hat and black hat tactics where, they're really pushing the envelope on things. If we go way, way back, people would put white text on a white background and stuff that page full of keywords that to the naked eye, no one could see, but to a search engine, it could see it. And, that just never felt right to me. It felt like, this is probably going to be detected at some point. Then it was like the keyword stuffing of, just who cares about the content? Let's just write it so we can get a bunch of keywords in there. And when people get to our website, they'll understand we're just, trying to get people. And we forgot about, well, I don't say we, the industry forgot about the experience of the user and the readability aspect. And, today people aren't always going to Google. They are going to a large language model such as ChatGPT, such as Claude, such as Perplexity, such as Grok. I mean, there's just, you name it, someone has their favorite language model. And if they don't, I can guarantee you within the next couple years, and when I say that in AI time, it's probably like 6 months, because everything seems to be happening so much faster and the time is getting compressed to where I just have never seen anything like it before. Making sure that you are visible to these answer engines in a logical way is a great test. And, I've had to change my mindset personally on a lot of these things that we are now recommending to our clients, because years ago, let's say a month ago, I really didn't get too fired up about how fast I could get a website to load or having schema on a website so that an answer engine could understand what it is that site is about, what that page is about. And now that people are really using these answer engines in the format of question an answer, it's not just having an FAQ on your website. It's literally how the headlines are displayed on the website, and you really have to look at things in a forward-thinking way so that you're not going to have to redo your website next week. I mean, the technical aspect of the site and the hosting environment and all these things, they did not matter before. In my opinion, based on the data that I saw, to invest the dollars into it, it didn't move the needle. What moved the needle was reviews and getting your link out there on quality websites. But today, when you've got the CEO of Google saying, in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a very good possibility we won't have a keyboard or a mouse on your desk. You're going to just speak what you want, just like with Siri and Alexa, and obviously Google sees that. And so, well, if we're going to speak what we want, how do we set that up on the website? And that's where I had to dig in and really investigate this schema world, not because I wanted to, but because I have to in order to be visible today, obviously on the search engines, but also be visible tomorrow. We're at an early adoption rate currently at the airing of this episode in terms of consumers and business owners adopting AI. But it is it's going to be like a hockey stick type growth as it continues to be adopted faster and faster. And, I used to rely on people to go and research this stuff and then tell me what we should be doing. And I trusted those people, and it worked out. But it was very expensive and it took a lot of time. Today, we can use research tools and subscriptions to research tools that will do that research for us and then tell us, hey, the consensus on these 22 sources is that speakable schema is important, and loading your website fast is important, and what it looks like on a mobile device is important. We decided to change platforms of websites, not because we wanted to. The websites we built look great, and it was easy to update, but it's not what the answer engines wanted.
Yeah.
And so by taking the extra time and having those answers, it's important that you think of it logically as a test. Does this logically make sense for the user experience? And if the answer is yes, most likely you should be doing it. And if the answer is, well, maybe, probably not. And if the answer is no, definitely not. So from a testing standpoint, for me, I wanted to bring up that because of the timeliness of AEO versus SEO. And for, our new listeners, AEO stands for answer engine optimization. So just like you would want to rank higher on a search engine and people would say, Google it, like you said in this podcast episode, we can go to Google and do it. And I'm thinking, well, I might go to Claude and do it. And that verb is going to change. And before I turn it back to you, Dustin, I do want to say, you mentioned PLAUD and you mentioned these wearables. And I know a lot of our audience are in the healthcare profession, and it is so important that you're looking at the tools that you're using and ensuring that you're HIPAA compliant. And PLAUD is one of the only devices that is not only HIPAA compliant, but SOC 2 certified, which means they really care about privacy and data. And it's a direct channel. So when you have that recorded and you get it onto their platform, there's no ability to get in and see what's going on. And, especially if you're using it for note taking, for treatment, which, if I'm a patient, I hope they're using that because they're going to be able to better treat me knowing these great notes and the concerns that I share in the room with the doctor. And so I just bring that up as an example on PLAUD and all these platforms to ensure compliance. And again, logically, does it make sense? Because a lot of these tools that we're using today out of the box are not HIPAA compliant.
Yeah, you've got to take this seriously. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV, but the groups I've worked with, their regulatory and compliance departments, stacked with really smart attorneys, are scaring the daylights out of dentists and orthodontists and anyone that deals with protected health information in the healthcare space, because even a metapixel put in the wrong spot can transmit patient data and result in millions of dollars of fines. So you've got to take this seriously. You got to work with someone smart who knows how to do this. Jimmy's the only one. All these software companies. I'm not going to name any names, but there's software companies. There's big groups that are like, oh, we're fine. We just self-certify. Like, no. So you've got to really do this the right way. I'll tell you, getting to hang out with Jimmy, I feel like what I see, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Jimmy, I feel like most businesses today in my space and a lot of the groups you work with and lots of different industries, they're still running a marketing playbook that is from 2020 or 2021. And at the time of this recording, it's 2026. So there's so much that's happened. The world has changed so much. Again, we talked about it recently. 60% of searches end in no click. If I had told you in 2020, hey, Jimmy, 60% of searches are going to end in no click, you'd be like, what do you mean? Right. So in the last 6 years, the world has changed, but a lot of business owners aren't changing their marketing tactics and strategies because quitting feels like giving up or failing, or it's like, well, what else would I do? This is just what I do. I just spend more and more and more on these channels, and I'm getting less and less and less results. So I can tell you, I've worked with large groups that getting patients to show up at 34% is like, yay. And then before, with dental referrals or patient referrals, it was like 89, 90, 95% show rate. If a dentist referred a patient, the mom called and the kid showed up. Now a consumer scrolling through TikTok lands on a page, or scrolling through an Instagram ad lands on a page, and 34% of the time they show up. It's really expensive because you don't get paid for when they show up. You still pay the digital advertising agency for all the clicks and all the impressions. You only get paid when they show up and convert. So I think this is just really exciting because it forces clarity. I think, even though I think AI is going to make it easier and faster and cheaper and won't automatically make it better, I do think it's going to allow the people that are successful to be even more successful. And it's going to make, unfortunately, the people who don't get on board with how the world is changing, is going to make them just not irrelevant, but they just won't show up. They're just not going to be at the table having these conversations because AEO is just not going to show them. So my assessment, kind of turning it back to you to wrap us up, is that I feel like most businesses are running a marketing playbook that's from 2020, and 2020 at times seems like 100 years ago, and other times it seems like 6 months ago. But what's happened in terms of digital marketing and how patients connect with service providers and retail products is just worlds apart.
I agree. I'll add that the data shows it is changing very fast in terms of where people are looking for the solutions that you provide. And just because, AI is the buzzword and we're talking about AEO a little bit tonight, it doesn't mean you have to be in that space. You could strategically choose, you know what? I'm not going to go invest a ton of revamping my site and getting in this AEO world. I'm going to do internal marketing, and I'm going to generate referrals, and I'm going to support the community. And it really depends on what levers you want to pull, what goals you're trying to achieve. And what I love today is, because of what we have access to with AI, we can feed the AI. My framework is called the intelligence machine, but you could do this with, any language model. You feed it the inputs of where you are, where you want to go, the profitability, what resources you have, what team members you have, what constraints you have, and get an objective answer. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, uh, based on where I'm at, why don't I do a reactivation campaign? Because I've got all these people that know me, and they haven't done business with me in a while, or they haven't referred somebody in a while. That's my lowest hanging fruit. And then at that point, when I get that money in, then maybe I'll do AEO, but maybe not. Maybe I'll do direct mail. Maybe, and that is an evolution that you'll need to look at more often than not. And there were about 20 other stories that I know I wanted to share tonight. And what we're going to do to keep these episodes, under an hour, if you go to wealthymomentumpodcast.com, wealthymomentumpodcast.com, and you put in your information, we will be distributing special reports as well as frameworks and scorecards and things that will help you implement these concepts. Listening to a podcast is wonderful. And I hope you choose to tune in to Dustin and I every month. But what would make us more excited and help us bring you better content and better topics is to have you implement some of these things. And we know everyone's busy, so we're going to make it as easy as possible. And you're going to have multiple resources, not only for the current episode, but as well as future episodes. And so we've got a whole little 3-page, very short exercise that you can go through. And, next month we'll be talking about hidden money, where you can find profit centers that you may not really know exist, and how we can utilize AI to help us do that. And so for those additional stories and the additional frameworks and everything, head over to wealthymomentumpodcast.com. We'll be dropping a new episode the first Friday of every month. And, I always look forward to our conversations, Dustin. I learn a ton just by interacting and getting, really forcing also for us to really articulate what is going on today, and how to apply it in a practice in a small business. And so, wealthymomentumpodcast.com. If you want to check us out on what we're doing together, Dustin and I, you can head over to wealthyentrepreneur.com. And then obviously, because we're video, you can check out our YouTube at Wealthy Entrepreneur HQ and subscribe there. And we'll be dropping a lot of content, a lot of bonus videos and shorts and all the different formats that we got to be having content today to stay relevant and be visible. Because in our world, the AEO and SEO is important.
Awesome, Jimmy. Thank you so much. Yeah, go download that resource that Jimmy mentioned. It's got a really neat keep and kill audit you can run inside your business. I would give it to some of your leaders inside your team, give it to your management, see what they say, sit down and grab a lunch and chat about it. This is how we make progress in the business. It's almost every business, unless you're building a SaaS company. Even that is still, so it's people driven. But I mean, like, most of us don't have a network effect. No one here is probably building the next Facebook. But if you're building a large service industry business or a consumer retail product, you're listening to an entrepreneur trying to figure out how to get more investors into your real estate, but whatever it is you're doing, it's probably done through people. So if you want to get traction, go download that keep or kill audit in your business, see what should stay, see what should go, talk about it with your team leaders, and then figure out what you can actually go get done. That's the fun part. I like implementing. That's the challenge I always had, standing on stage in front of, 500,000, over in Italy, 2,000 people, is it's really hard to make a significant amount of traction with any individual unless we had a breakout Q&A session. And even then, the time was limited. So this is your chance to actually take these principles and go do something with them, get a result with them. And again, Jimmy, I'm always honored to be here with you. Thanks for the chance to hang out and learn with you and from you. And looking forward to the future podcast. Again, in the next episode, we're going to talk about what your next dollar is hiding. It's actually inside your business. You don't have to spend another penny on advertising. Most of you have 15 to 30% more revenue sitting inside your business, often tolerating inefficiencies, tolerating certain behaviors, not knowing what's kind of hidden in your database. It's really powerful. I think you're going to like it. So I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Awesome. We'll see you next month.
Bye, guys.
Clarity creates alignment. Alignment builds momentum. Momentum produces wealth. Get additional resources, scorecards, and frameworks at wealthymomentumpodcast.com. New episodes the first Friday of every month.